to well, I want to go back to how you got involved in martial arts first and how you got to Japan, because I find that story just so intriguing. I want the audience to hear it as well. Inspired you to start martial arts, and how'd you end up in Japan?
Well, in the 1950s, there was a little bit of martial arts in California, maybe a little bit in New York. And, I was like 5 or 6, and I still remember this. I went to kindergarten, and, I'm a bright, happy kid. And, yeah, not every kid's bright and happy. And, there were some bullies there. And I remember watching these bullies in action. And I didn't get bullied so much, but other kids did. And I just thought, this is wrong. I was so naive. A young kid who was brought up in a happy home where, we were encouraged. And, not all kids are brought up in happy homes. And, but I didn't know what to do about it. And I saw in 1956, I think it was, there was a Lassie TV show. Remember the Lassie show, the
Sure.
Ollie and
Yeah.
and they had a Japanese exchange student. Now this is like 10 years after World War II is over. I mean, just 10 years. And this little Japanese kid comes, and some of these farmyard bullies are kind of picking on him, and he uses this karate and judo. And I'm just blown away by this, and this little skinny Japanese kid beats these other kids. And, they're holding their arms and creeping away. And they go home and they tell their dad, this Japanese kid beat us up. And so the dad, he's a rednecky guy, he comes, he tries to set fire to Lassie's barn. And Lassie comes out and grabs him by the arm, dog teeth in there. And, screaming and yelling. And so the little Japanese kid comes out, and Lassie's owners are there. And he says, "Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute." He runs back to his room, and he comes out with some kind of healing salve, and he uses that on this guy. And oh, God, I'm just, like 6 years old. I am just blown away. You mean you can tear somebody up if you need to, and you can heal them if they will let you?
Right,
And
right.
oh, God. So that was my obsession, began. And I didn't get to actually start martial arts until like 10 or 12 years later when I went to college. I got involved in a Tang Sudo group that was run for, this is back in the Vietnam War days, and they had like a ROTC, Navy
Right.
kids were in these. I wasn't in the Navy, but I had to get involved in this. I found a way to finagle my way in, even though I wasn't in the Navy, and I just ate it up. I mean, it was fabulous. And my mother used to joke around. She'd say, "Oh, my friends ask what you're studying in college," and I say, "Oh, he's majoring in karate." No, I would go to like 3 classes a day, and it was crazy. And about then, late 60s, I got a hold of this book by a journalist in Tokyo, Andrew Adams. And it was all about the invisible assassins, the ninja of Japan. Oh gosh, I'm in this little country college in Ohio reading this thing, and it was actually painful, painful. Oh God, I was born on the wrong side of the Pacific. And so I continued on with my Tang Sudo, and then I just couldn't stand it. I just gotta go. I gotta find these people. I'm 25 years old. Somehow managed to scrape up enough money to buy an air ticket to Japan. I can't even read Japanese. I didn't even think about that. And I went to Japan. I just got on the plane and went to Japan. And
Do you
I'm
know anybody there?
no, didn't know a soul. You know,
Could you speak Japanese?
A little bit. I'd taken a year in college, and the funny thing is, what they teach you back in the 60s in college is very formal Japanese, and nobody speaks that in formal
Oh,
Japanese.
yes.
And
Right.
oh gosh, but I mean, once I hit Japan, I mean, miracles, miracles happened. Just I would meet this guy, and they would happen to take me to the right place, and I finally found this little town where this guy lived. And, I'm hanging around this little antique train station, and there just happened to be a girl who spoke English. And she said, "Oh, my boyfriend's going to pick me up and take me. I can drop you off at the inn." I said, "Oh, that'd be great." So they took me to this inn. I'm talking to the innkeeper, this little old lady. And I said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to study ninjutsu." And she just cracked up. I mean, it'd be like meeting a little Japanese guy in, Hooterville, Iowa. And he said, "Well, I'm here to study with Batman." It's, oh, no, it's something. And so this woman, this Masaki Hatsumi is his name. And she says, "Well, Masaki Hatsumi is not a ninja. He's a physical therapist." And I'd read in the book that's what he did for a living. So that's him. That's him. And she says, "No." She says, "I'm his mother's childhood friend. We've known each other our whole life, and he's not a ninja." She said, "But I can call him up if you want." And so, I mean, I just happened to be at this one inn
Right
with
place, right time.
unbelievable. And she called him up, and he came over that night, and uh, agreed to let me come the next day, train with these guys. And they were all in their 20s. And, a funny thing. I was so honored that they just accepted me. And, I had told people that story. And so years later, my Japanese wife is talking with one of my Japanese, fellow training guys. He's a military officer in the Japanese army. Well, and and she's saying, "Oh yeah, Stephen was really honored, that you guys would just accept him." And he cocks his head and goes, "Oh, is that what he thought happened?" And she goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a minute, whoa, whoa, whoa. What's the scoop?" And he goes, "Oh," he says, "for our generation, he's a big guy." And the headmaster thought, "Hey, let's bring him in and try our stuff out on him." And, he might stick around
You
for
were just
about,
a guinea pig.
yeah, he might stick around for about 5 days and then think we're all crazy, and he'll leave and we can go back to training. And I just never left.
You never left.
Yeah.
Well,
So, it
you're
was brutal. It was brutal. But I thought, oh man, this is what I wanted my whole life since I was a tiny child, And
You know, I find that fascinating because your personality is so similar to mine. I had a track scholarship in Charleston, South Carolina. And during the summer, I met a karate instructor at the University of South Carolina in Columbia. One meeting, I go back home. I call my track coach up. I get out of my track scholarship. I transfer over to USC and start taking karate after one meeting. My dad goes, "What are you doing? You have no." I just was compulsive. I was so focused. You were the same way, but on steroids, the way you did it. So, I have a friend of mine. I've interviewed him before. His name is Keith Cook. His name's Keith Hirabashi. He is one of
yes.
the most wonderful people on this planet. And he was like us. He went because he loved the wushu, the Chinese training. So he traveled to China and trained with the wushu there. And what he was amazed about was that the training were like at 6 hour training intervals. Here in the States, you might train an hour at a karate class or whatever. So he was like in shock. What was your training like in Japan?
Well, we would meet like twice a week at the headmaster's house. I mean, there are only like 12 people in the whole world studying ninjutsu, and we'd move boxes out of this room and we'd train. But then the other days, different ones of us would get together in like temple yards
Right.
and practice and train. And I mean, we didn't have any guidance on those training sessions. So some of the things we'd have to try to figure out on our own. And, which I think helped me in a way. I had to really investigate. And this headmaster, this Hatsumi, he's a tricky guy. I mean, he'd show junk, and just to see if we would believe him. And then he'd laugh at us when we were trying it. He said, "Come on, I was just kidding you guys. Here's the way that it really is." And oh man, everything turned upside down and inside out. And I met Keith Cook at the Black Creek filming.
Right. And he was there in Arizona.
Yeah, yeah. He was such a wonderful guy. He comes up to me and is very humble, very humble. And I didn't recognize him. He had cowboy thing and beard, and he's very humble, very polite. He said, I've always wanted to meet you. And I said, "Oh, thank you. That's great." And he said, "You and I were elected to the Black Belt Hall of Fame in 1985 together. And that was my goal. I always wanted to meet the other guy who really." Yeah, yeah. And so I came home, I looked it up. Yeah, sure enough. He was elected to the Black Belt Hall of Fame in 1985.
Yes. You were the instructor of the year. Keith Cook was the competitors of the year. 4 years earlier, see my finger pointing right there? That's mine. I got competitor of the year. And I did the same. I would always see who would get, because that was the single most prestigious Black Belt Hall of Fame award. That was
Absolutely.
Black Belt Magazine. I don't care what Hall of Fame you think you belong to, whatever, they're all great. I love them all. But when you're in the Black Belt Hall of Fame, it started off with Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, Joe. I mean, those were the icon names. And
Yeah.
so I was here just 4 years earlier than you in that, and it was always a pleasure and an honor for me. But I just remember reading about you and Keith Cook in the same year, and that's wonderful that you guys met in Arizona. That's pretty
Oh,
cool.
and he's a great actor.
Oh yeah,
I
he's
I
good.
had a scene with him where, I'm a real jerk in this movie. And I'm there with, Richard
Yeah,
Norton, and he's like, was a
yeah.
former boyfriend of the Cynthia Rothrock Daisy character. And I mean, he was a really good actor. I was just stunned, at the subtlety of his playing the role, trying to deal with this maniac guy. And, but he's like holding his ground. He was fabulous. Keith was, he was great. And, then he blew me away when he told me who he
Well,
was.
get this. In Hollywood, they say be careful about wanting to meet your idols or your heroes because they might disappoint you. Keith is not one of those. When you meet Keith, he is the most gracious, humble, but one of the most talented martial artists on the planet. This guy is so good. He really is. So I really treasure calling him a very good friend, and we have a
Oh,
good relationship. So that's great.
well, I now can call him a friend. Yeah, now he finally
Oh,
met.
that's good.
He was such a
So tell
wonderful.
me this. You were in Japan. You had no money when you went there. You had no job. You had nothing. How did you survive? What were you doing? Because now you're taking martial arts, you're taking ninjutsu training, but how do you survive while you're there?
Well, just another miracle. I got involved with. Uh, See, I mean, back in those days, there was no cell phone, and most homes
Yeah.
didn't even have a phone in Japan in the 70s. And I lived way out from Tokyo, and so everything I was looking for was in Tokyo. And I actually thought I would get in the movies in Japan because I have a different looking face. And short version of the story, I met this woman, young American woman, who got me a job. She worked for Canon, the camera and business machine company.
Right.
So we were looking for somebody who could do voice work. So back in the analog days, the Canon company would come out with a new product. They would have a reader read a script, and then they would like show slides. The new Canon XR73 will bring a whole range, or, and so I would read this and, and
You got a great voice.
yeah, yeah. And then they had a German voice, and they even had a British voice. We would all read these things. And so the wonderful thing about it is, I just worked a couple hours a day and they paid me phenomenally well, phenomenally well. And uh, so then later, this woman said, "Oh, my husband, she's married to a Japanese. My husband used to work for MGM in America." I said, "Oh, God, really?" She says, "Yeah, he's thinking of starting up a talent agency in Tokyo." And this is kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to ask you anyway. He doesn't have any clients, but he needs to put together a book. So could we take like a picture of you and put you in the book and claim you're a client?" And she says, "You have to. You wouldn't even have to take any jobs, but it would like look like you're
Yeah.
a guy, And and I said, "Well, funny you mentioned that. I would actually be interested in him representing me." And so I was like a cowboy in a Japanese Western. I actually got hanged. I got hanged. And I was oh gosh, I was a doctor in Hawaii, and then the role that most people know, I was in Shogun, and
Of course.
I was with Shogun for about a month and a half, and I had different roles that I played on that, and paid phenomenally well, so I could like train and visit castles and zoom around, and so it's just a miracle, just a miracle that happened for me.
You know, all martial artists are usually ecstatic when we have another martial artist that does well. And we heard about you doing Shogun. Now, I'm a history major at USC. I love history.
Oh,
I love Shogun. I read Shogun, James Clavell's books, Taipan, Noble House, Gaijin. I read them all. Did you ever read
wow.
Shogun yourself?
Oh, I sure did. I sure did. And I was just amazed. In fact, he didn't get me the job, and I heard through the grapevine they're doing Shogun in Tokyo, and so I called him up. "Hey, Jim, what? You didn't get me Shogun?" He says, "Oh, they're not paying at your scale, so I didn't even bother you." I said, "Oh no, I want to do it, no matter what they're paying." And actually, they paid quite well. But he's he's thinking, "Oh no, we only get him these top jobs." And so I got in there, but I had read the novel. I loved it. It was fabulous. And, to work with Toshiro Mifune
Oh,
and,
please. I mean,
and
those
Rich.
are kind of things that I was eating up. What? Because guess what? My life kind of mirrors yours a little bit. I went to started at University of South Carolina taking martial arts. That's where I took it at the same place, just like
Yeah.
that. So I was studying all of this, and I was reading, all the James Clavell books. I read all. Oh my gosh, I was just loving it. And the fact that you were there and experiencing that, I mean, I'm the word's not jealous, is envious. I'd love it. I was kind of living through your
Oh, that's
experiences,
great.
which are just wonderful. We were so proud of you. The martial artists, we were all proud of everything that you were doing, and we kept up with you because usually the back of the martial arts magazines, they had ninja stuff always at the back of them, and I always loved all of that stuff. But the new series Shogun has just come out. Have you watched any of those episodes yet?
I've watched all three episodes and I am blown away. It is
It's good.
phenomenal. I mean,
Yes.
phenomenal. I
I
got to give that to them. They are doing a fabulous job with it. I think. I think.
I do too. They're so authentic. You know, what I just get so frustrated. They're not on Netflix where I can watch them all together. I
Oh yeah,
hate waiting a week. I just go,
yeah.
it was over last night. I watched it last night. I went, gotta wait another week. And I just get so excited about it. I think I'm gonna wait. I can binge on all of them at one time. They're so good. I really enjoyed it. So you're part of that history. Just think of that. That's in your genetics and the whole bit, which is just really wonderful. So how long were you in Japan before you came back to the States?
Well, I would over in like 75. I came back because I was on a tourist visa, and that's another miracle. I had this little Japanese friend, and I said, I got to get a different visa because I can't, tourist visa. I can only stay for 3 months, and I got to get something that'll let me stay for several years. But but to get a work visa, you have to have a job. But in order to have a job, you got to have a work visa, and oh, it's awful.
That's
And
22.
he's
Yep.
listening. He's
Yep.
listening to me complain. He's just nodding, and he goes, "Oh," he says, "just last week, the consulate put me in charge of the visa section, so I can get you a visa." He got me a cultural visa, which, it was so rare. It let me do anything. I could work, I could travel, and it lasted for years. And when I actually came back to Japan with this visa, the the guy didn't even know what it was. He'd never seen one before. It was so fabulous. And so, but I came back in 1980. That visa ran out in 1980, and I had just gotten married, and came back, and then, as I mentioned, thought we would live in Southern California, and we did for about a year and a half. And I don't know. I mean, I just ran into so many almosts with the movies, and oh, and then my wife was pregnant in '82, and I just didn't feel like I was a Southern California guy, and so we moved back
Right.
to the woods of Ohio. And
Ask you, was your experience in all your years of training in Japan, was it everything that you thought before you went there, or did it exceed all your expectations?
well, I have to give you two answers. Okay. So the first answer was I was doing Tang Sudo. I mean, in the '60s, it was very linear, it was power.
Hard karate.
Punch comes in, you knock the punch away, and you nail this guy hard, and just hope he's not a whole lot bigger than you or madder. And so I didn't have any grappling skill, no weapon skill. And they punched and they grappled and choked and used the weapons. So it it was like amazing. Now this is, God, almost 50 years ago. There was no MMA in those days, and there was no cross training. I mean, everybody cross trains today, and but there wasn't any of that. So you did karate, or you did judo, or you did aikido, or you did kendo, but that was it. But this
Right.
art is so old; it was before the Meiji era, which is, like the late 1800s, and Japan radically westernized. You could teach a farm boy how to shoot a gun in a couple of weeks, and but to teach him how to use a sword. So this art existed kind of in the shadows, and so that was amazing to me. I had to learn how to grapple and choke people out, and punch and kick, and use short blades and sticks and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, I literally started over again. I literally started over, and they would just tear me apart. I would get in a Tang Sudo fighting posture, and they goes, "Really? Is that how you're going to fight me?" And I said, "Well, sure." Oh God, they ate me for breakfast. They just ate me up, and so that was great. Um, 20 years later, 20 years later, in the mid '90s, I really came to the great realization. I was trained in a 1500s Japanese fighting system, and people used to fight differently in the 1500s, than in the modern days. And I realized I'm going to be in the U.S. And Europe. I used to do a lot in Europe in those days, and we really can't just teach this old timey thing. So I took the principles and I just changed how the attacker attacked, and kind of created my own approach. And so that was, like the second part of the answer to the question, no, I really had to invent using the actual principles and those techniques, but I had to bring it into a modern application. And oh, it sounds like I'm bragging now, but
No, no, because when you got here, you started writing books. Did you put all of this in your books? What was your system called? Because
well,
you were creating a new one.
yeah, we call it Toshindo. And if anybody listening can read Japanese, there's a character for nin of ninja. And on the top part, it's a blade. And the bottom part, it means heart, like heart and mind. And so that's nin of ninja. So I took the top part, moved it over, and took the bottom part and made two kanji out of it. So it's to shin. So it refers to the ninja. And but I didn't feel this modern system that I was teaching. It wasn't really right calling it ninjutsu because I still taught a few people the old ways. And so we called it Toshin Do. To meaning a sword, and Shin is a heart. So To is our physical technique. Shin is the inner realization or inner development. And I was really focused on street, like self-defense. I really wasn't teaching an art as such. It was really self-defense. And so much, even back in the 90s, and of course in the 2020s, you have to be so careful on the street.
Right.
You get attacked by two people and you dislocate somebody's jaw and you put somebody's eye out. The dirtbags always get good lawyers, and they drag you into court. The first thing they're
Right.
going to ask is, okay, now how long have you been studying this Japanese assassin, the
Right.
martial? Oh God,
Right. Oh my gosh. You would be liable because the word assassin would come up every time.
Oh,
So you were trained as an assassin, right?
so so we incorporate verbal stuff that you can do that's kind of ninja like,
Right.
tricky, and verbal things, and we practice that sometimes in the dojo where it's not always an attack. Somebody says something
Exactly.
and you get to use this line, and uh oh, I mean, and it's kind of humorous a little bit, So I mean, somebody's huffing and puffing, and he's showing off for his girlfriend or his buddies or whatever, and yeah, well, yeah. Oh man, I gotta apologize to you. You're the third guy today that wants to whip my tail, and I'm buddy's day up. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna get in my truck. I'm gonna take off. You get in yours, and goodbye, and you have a good day. And
Right.
it's humorous, and saves the guy a face. He might chuckle a little bit or call me a wussy or whatever. It doesn't matter. But you have to do that with that voice. The voice has to come from the gut. Hey, you're the third guy. If you do it from up here, hey, look, I'm sorry. I did. No, 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 no. You're the guy he's looking to. Nobody, a bully person doesn't want to fight. They want to administer a beating. They don't want to fight. And if they think you're a little bit too self-assured, they may be looking for a way out. But now his girlfriend's watching him, or his buddies. So anyway, that's just one of the lines that we'll practice and
Right.
use, and it may work and it may not. I mean, some guy may come after us, in which case we have to deliver the
The
technique.
whole
But
idea is that you have a strategy. You have a strategy for self-defense. It's not all about, using your martial arts to injure something. Sometimes the best reality is just to walk away or just talk, like you said, talk your way out of it. Humor is a great tool to use. And verbal, there's all kind of abuse, uh, bullying, not just physical bullying. There's verbal bullying. I've
oh,
written books on bullying as well. And one of the things I always try to tell everybody is the fact that a bully can hit you in the arm and you can feel that pain maybe for a day or hour, maybe a week. But when the bully is verbally abusive, when the bully says something so hurtful to you, like in school, it can last with you for a lifetime. You will remember that the rest of your life, but you won't remember that punch. But something so hurtful, so all types of bullying. So you're doing a great job. I know you wrote books, a series of books, because I was writing, get this, for the same company at the same time. get this. Here's my book, contemporary books. I wrote a series of them, and at the
Wow.
same time, he was telling me about you writing books for contemporary books. And what people didn't realize is those books sold well, didn't they?
They sure did. I tell people there were 5 years I did not have a job. I lived on book royalties. Now, I mean, I wasn't a billionaire, but
Right.
hey, bought nice cars and bought our house and went back. So, like, once 80 came and I came back to the US, I would go back to Japan with my wife and then my wife and my daughters every year and kind of renew my training. And, all that stuff adds up. So for 5 years, I lived off of book royalties. So, when you think about a technical book and then a martial art book, who's going to be buying that? Well, enough people did that. It's just another one of those miracles in my
Well,
life.
my first one sold 30,000 copies, and people said that's unheard of. They were going, what? And then they gave me, then they said, we want you to write two more just like that, different, just it's called beginning karate and intermediate karate. And, and they're so basic. And the key was that it was so basic. And then I realized that your basic training is more important than all the jump and the sizzles and all.
Uh,
And then I also did created a bullion tape, and it sold all over the country. And I was on Oprah with it. This is when you're going out of the country, so you had no access to any of this, but we were mirroring each other's kind of philosophies and being very positive and confident. And so I'm glad that my life kind of mirrored yours. Yours is much better and much more blessed, and
yeah.
I have a great life as well. But we're so proud of everything that you've done. Let me ask you a couple just basic questions. Um, I'd like to interview another time and talk more about Buddhism and all of that. I know you work for the Dalai Lama. How was that experience?
Oh, that was amazing. That was like 12 years of my life when he would come to North America to travel around. I would be his like left hand guy, and on his right hand would be Tibetan security people. And I mean, this guy is just amazing. People ask me, I mean, what's he like really, behind closed doors? And I said, no, this guy totally lives up to his billing. He is most amazing. I mean, uh, yeah, I'm kind of speechless. I can't really say enough about him. So I was so blessed. I was providing a service, but I was so blessed. We'd be hanging around the green room waiting for an interview. And, in the beginning, I ask him a lot of questions. And, oh, God, I'm so embarrassed, the primitive level of the questions I would ask. But he would always answer me at my own level and never acted like he was annoyed or anything like that. And then as the years went by, I quit asking questions. I would just observe him and listen,
Right.
to him as he spoke to the crowd. And yeah, so we could do another interview where, the wonderful thing I tell people about Buddhism is you don't have to believe in anything and the stuff still works. It's really about a mind understanding my mind and understanding my heart and understanding my guts. And the more we understand about how we operate, the less likely we are to get our buttons pushed by some. I mean, it could be the office jerk, or it could be somebody on the street. It's just trying to push your buttons and get you to lose your cool. And so the more you know about yourself, the less likely that is to happen. And just wonderful experience. Yeah, with the Dalai Lama and the
I know.
Tibetan. They thought it was fun. Oh yeah, we've got a ninja as His Holiness body.
You, how cool is that? I'm thinking the same thing. If you were with me, I'd go, I've got a ninja over here. My claim to fame is I was killed by a ninja in Revenge of the Ninja. That's as close I'll ever be. So that was really good. I heard Steven Seagal was given a deity uh by the Dalai Lama. Is that true? Were you part of
Oh
that?
no, there was another Lama. from another group, but
I
not
got
the
you.
Dalai Lama. Yeah. He used to come to Dalai Lama events, but the Tibetans would tell me, don't let him get close to the Dalai Lama. Yeah, because they were familiar with Steven
Right.
Seagal's reputation, and I don't think Mr. Seagal thinks highly of me.
Right.
Uh, and
Well, I'm not
um,
worried about him. I don't know him. I probably will never meet him, and he probably doesn't like me either. So we're probably in the same camp.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
he had no respect. He never had respect for martial artists. He would say things, negative things like for Michael J. White, who I think is one of the best athletes on the planet, or Chuck Norris, or
yeah.
all these great guys that are martial arts fighters, and he'd poo-poo them. Oh, they're not any good. And I go, no, I got some bad news for you. These guys are great. Joe
Yes.
Lewis, those guys were
Oh,
tremendous.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it comes back to something you and I were just talking about just a few moments ago. The more advanced you become as a human being, the more blessed we are. I mean, I've seen on Facebook, you have a beautiful wife. You've been married for years. You've got kids. You've got
Grandchildren, yes.
grandkids. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a beautiful life, and you've gotten to do all these cool things that you wanted to do. And now you haven't retired, have you? You still have your insurance?
No, I'm still working. I have
Yeah.
an insurance company, and my wife
Uh-huh.
is a president of a mortgage company. So my wife says, I'm never retiring. I got to keep working. But we love to travel, and we love our grandkids and our kids, and our life's so blessed. We have a nice, home at a country club. I play tennis in the league. I play golf. Guess what? I live a blessed life. I
You
do.
won. You won. You won, because I mean, not saying this joyfully, but there are some well-known martial artists that have not been quite as lucky as you and I have been, and they've had tough lives. And but no, you definitely won. You won, and I think that the more success we create, the more
Right.
comfortable we are. And I read a quote on the internet. Somebody was saying, uh, a critic always criticizes somebody above them. So somebody up here never criticizes some poor small person, you know, a great Hollywood star or a great athlete is never going to criticize a small person trying to do that. But the small one is always going to be shooting at the people at the top. And I saw, that hit me. Yeah, I remember that. So I make it a policy. And it was mine from the 70s, somebody's yapping about me. Oh, he's a fake, or he's a phony, or oh, I could take him. As I never reply. I never
No,
reply.
don't.
Uh, never
It's
reply.
like politics. It's like politics. I don't care what side of the aisle, you're not going to ever convince the other side. Why even go there? They don't. I mean, and you have a great philosophy, very similar to mine. And I didn't get mine from Richard Norton, but Richard Norton's the same. Richard told me in one of my interviews, he's like my mentor. And,
Oh,
I
is he really?
really look up to Richard
Oh,
Norton.
I love Richard. He is a wonderful
I do
guy.
too. He said,
Really, you know,
Keith, he goes, what my theory is now? I don't deal with anybody negative or anybody that I don't like. I just want to be surrounded by positive people and people I enjoy to be around. I went, that's me. And then guess what? I heard you say the same thing. And I think that's one of the philosophies of life is surround yourself with like people, very positive, and don't deal with the negative and all of that.
I totally agree with that. Now, I will admit, I'm 74 years old and I've got life made. And, there are some young ones that have to work in an office where you got some crappy people. And, somebody's going to say, well, I have to put up with bad people. And I would say, well, you don't really have to. But no, that's mine. I say that I only deal with people I like. And,
Right, right.
and I
Life's
can
too
get away
short not to.
I can get away with it now.
Let me ask you your opinion about the ninja movies of the 80s. what was your impression of them? Could you watch those movies and enjoy them from a entertainment standpoint? Like somebody like me, who's a layman, I would just see him jumping around. I go, "That's cool." Or are you so critical that you have a hard time watching them and going, "No, that's just not realistic."
Well, I think a good parallel would be um, like a Western movie in the 1940s and the 1950s, and they would have Indians, and the Indians would,
Right.
you know, be like Italian actors.
Exactly.
It would scream, they'd fire arrows, and they'd circle around the
Right.
wagon train, and but then in the late 70s and early 80s, they started doing movies like from the Indian standpoint. Bury
Right.
My
Perspective. Yep.
Wounded Knee and Dances with Wolves and
Right.
oh, whoa, 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 whoa. We've really cast these people kind of stereotypically. And so I think from my experience with the ninja martial art, there's so much that doesn't really go with the stereotype. And so when I would watch the movie, it'd be like an American Indian watching a 1940s Indian movie. Everybody said, "Well,
Oh,
you got
see,
the
that's so cool.
he's got a Paiute headdress, but he's supposed to be a Oglala Sioux, and you'd have all these
Right.
things."
Right.
And
That's a great perspective.
yeah, yeah,
I know I like that. I can't believe you said that because when I first went to Hollywood myself, young guy, and I was going to try to, get an agent and went out there. They looked at me and they said, "You'll never make it in Hollywood because the only roles you can play is an Indian in Westerns," because I was Italian.
no kidding, really.
That was funny. Of course, I went on to do a series of films after that. And the lesson was don't listen to idiots. Just stay focused and confident. But I just remember you said that. It's funny. He goes, "You're Italian. The only role you'll get will be Indians and Westerns."
See, there you go, there you go. Yeah, yeah, it's true.
Has anybody ever approached you about doing a life story? I've done them on like what Frank Duke, they did Bloodsport, and they've done them on other people. Have people approached you about doing a your life story, maybe?
No, nobody really has. You
It'd be
know,
an interesting movie.
I think it would be, we could punch it up a little bit and because I mean, they're not all the Japanese guys liked me. There were a couple of them that really told the headmaster, you should not be teaching this foreign guy this. And so there were some uh antagonism there. And then
Was it any of it holdover from the war 20, 25 years earlier? Was it any of that?
I it's possible. It's possible. But all these guys were my age. They were
Right.
young. The headmaster was in his 40s, but I thought of him as this wizard old guy in his 40s. And
Right.
yeah, so I don't think there was that much. There could have been a little bit, I mean, this was like 30 years after the war. So
Gotcha. And still, people can remember, especially the bombs and all of that. What about another question about a TV series here in the States? Shokasugi played with a guy, Lee Van Cleef, in a show called The Master. It's based on like you, American going to Japan to learn.
uh,
Any reference to that? Did you ever watch that, or what you think about that series? It didn't last long.
no, it didn't. And Lee Van Cleef, I think my theory is Lee is dead now. So, but I think the people who arranged this remembered Lee Van Cleef from the Clint Eastwood westerns, and I
Right.
mean he was a scary dude. That squint, and that nose, and I mean he was like scary guy. And a couple of years went by, and said, "Hey, let's get Lee Van Cleef to be the head of the ninja." And he's sort of like your Uncle Mort, he's kind of not really a scary looking guy anymore. And
So, I visited him on the set one time and with
yeah,
Show and Lee Van Cleef. He says we all just started talking. We said, let's go see the movie playing that night was Revenge of the Ninja. So while he was making that series, so Lee Van Cleef, myself, and Show drove together. And we went to see the movie together.
No
and
kidding.
had
No kidding.
dinner and leave. He would tell me stories and the whole bit. And but Show was something else. Show was he was a card. Yeah, I'll tell you a very quick story. We're in the theater watching it, and the sound wasn't loud enough. So he ran up there and told the person in the projections, turn it louder. With just a few minutes to go, he got up and he ran. Cho runs to up the aisle and goes to the door. So Lee goes, "Where's he going?" And I went, "I don't know. The movie's over, getting ready to go over, and the credits are rolling." So Lee and I are talking. We looked over. He's at the door and he's waiting for people to exit the theater and recognize him. And he got upset because they didn't recognize him.
No kidding. Really?
And he
Really?
goes, "Yeah, he's mad." He goes, "I can't believe they didn't recognize me." And he wanted to shake their hands. But anyway, I'm so sorry. I mean, that's just a quick story about them. But I
Oh,
just want to thank you so much for doing this podcast with me, this interview with me. I'm honored to have you on the show. I've always considered you a friend, but I've always really respected everything you've done. So I'd like to get you on another interview sometime and we can talk about other subject matters. But thank you so much for doing this. I've really enjoyed every bit of it. And then
oh,
let me just say this, I'll sign out. I want to say to my audience out there, please, if you like this interview, please like it and share it. And as always, please subscribe. Until next time, ciao.